The HOA president slammed her clipboard against my porch railing and shouted, "Hand over the lake or we'll bury you in fines." I almost laughed. They thought I was powerless, a newcomer they could push around. What they didn't know, every single dock already belonged to me. My name is Daniel, 42, and after years of scraping by in a cramped apartment after divorce, I finally found hope. An inheritance had dropped into my lap, a lakeside property my uncle had quietly held on to for decades. The moment I first pulled my old pickup onto that gravel drive, the world changed. The air smelled clean, sharp with pine. Sunlight shimmered across water so blue it looked painted. Loons cried somewhere near the reeds, and a cool breeze carried the promise of peace. After years of noise and concrete, the lake felt like salvation. I imagined rebuilding here, maybe even winning back time with my teenage son who thought his old man was nothing but a screw-up. This lake wasn't just water, it was my chance to prove I could build something real. Uncle had always said, "The land hides secrets, boy. Treat it right and it'll protect you." At the time, I chalked it up to one of his eccentric sayings. I didn't realize just how true those words were until the homeowners association stormed onto my land demanding I give up everything I'd just begun to love. 3 days into unpacking, I was stacking lumber near the shoreline when I heard the crunch of expensive tires on gravel. A glossy black BMW rolled up, and out stepped Victoria Green, Pinewood Shores HOA president. Mid-50s, designer sunglasses, and an ego too large to fit inside her tailored blazer. She strutted up like a general inspecting troops. Behind her trailed 2 board members with matching clipboards and smug smiles. "Are you the individual responsible for this construction?" she sneered, gesturing at my modest cabin frame like it was toxic waste. "Yes. My land, my cabin," I replied, setting down my hammer. "Correction," she snapped, waving legal-looking papers. "This lake belongs to the community. You are trespassing on shared property. Remove your materials within 48 hours or face escalating fines." I blinked at her, stunned. "The lake? This is my shoreline." She leaned in, voice sharp as broken glass. "People like you don't last here. We have standards. I'd hate for your son to visit and find you embarrassed, or worse." The mention of my boy hit hard. They dug into my life. But what Victoria didn't know was that threatening me was the most expensive mistake she'd ever make. That night, their threats gnawed at me. Could they really take my lake? The next morning, I drove to the county courthouse. The air inside heavy with dust and the faint buzz of fluorescent lights. "Help me pull the file on this parcel," I asked the clerk. She disappeared into the records room and returned with a thick folder. The scent of old paper hit like history itself. As I flipped through deeds and maps, my pulse quickened. My uncle hadn't just left me the shoreline. The paperwork showed full riparian rights, meaning the water, docks, and access points were all legally tied to my property. Even more stunning, the HOA had been formed less than a year ago, months after my uncle's death. Their so-called covenants tried to wrap the lake into their control, but legally, they couldn't touch it. I stared at the map. Every dock around the lake, nearly 40 of them, stood on ground legally tied to my deed. Every fishing boat, jet ski, and pontoon they loved so much was mine to control. I walked out of that courthouse holding the secret weapon that would turn their smug threats into ashes. When Victoria realized I wasn't folding, she went to war. Within days, I found envelopes stuffed in my mailbox. Violation notices, each demanding thousands in fines for unauthorized shoreline usage. By the end of the week, the total climbed past $15,000. Then came the social warfare. Photos of me unloading lumber showed up on a Pinewood Shores Facebook group labeled "Lake Hog Threatens Community." Comments piled up, "Get rid of him. Dangerous outsider." At the grocery store, neighbors turned away. Parents pulled their kids closer when I walked by. Someone even spray-painted "Leave" across my truck door. One morning, I stepped outside to find roofing nails scattered across my driveway like glittering landmines. Another day, 3 SUVs parked across my entrance, not blocking completely, just enough to make it clear I wasn't welcome. The final straw came when a neighbor I'd never met muttered, "We'll take our lake back one way or another." The intimidation was suffocating. But here's the thing, Desperation makes people sloppy. And Victoria's arrogance would soon hand me the evidence I needed to crush her little empire. Because while she thought I was cowering, I was building a case that would unravel everything she'd stolen. I reached out to Sarah, a sharp real estate attorney whose reputation was forged on untangling shady HOA scams. When I dropped the deed on her desk, her eyes lit up. "They don't just have no case," she said, flipping through papers. "They're digging themselves into a grave. You own the lake. Every dock, every boat slip, their entire community fund depends on you." At the same time, my neighbor Jake pulled me aside one evening. He wasn't a fan of the HOA either. "You didn't hear it from me," he whispered, "but Victoria's lining up a deal with a resort developer. They need your lake to make it happen. She's desperate to push you out because you're standing in the way of millions." The puzzle pieces locked into place. This wasn't about community rules. It was about greed. So, Sarah and I drafted documents. Eviction notices for docks, evidence of their fraudulent timelines, and a neat little packet exposing Victoria's financial conflicts of interest. If they wanted a fight, I was bringing it to the community meeting, where I'd reveal the truth in front of every single neighbor they'd manipulated. Victoria thought she held the lake. She was about to drown in it. The Pinewood Shores clubhouse was packed, air thick with perfume, sweat, and tension. Folding chairs scraped against tile as nearly 100 neighbors filled the room. News cameras lined the back wall. Victoria strutted to the podium, heels clicking like gunfire. Her PowerPoint blazed on the screen, protecting our lake from outsiders. She pointed at me in the crowd. "This man is a trespasser, a danger to our families. He refuses to comply with community standards, and he owes us over $20,000 in fines." Gasps rippled through the room. Neighbors muttered. I stood slowly, leather folder under my arm. "Actually, Victoria, I think you owe me." The room fell silent. I walked to the podium, laid out my deed, and held it high enough for the cameras. "This isn't just shoreline. I own the water rights, which means every dock you're sitting on belongs to me, including—" I flipped to a photo. "Yours, Victoria, and you're 3 months behind on dock fees." The crowd erupted. People shouted, demanded answers. Victoria's face went pale as stone. I raised my voice over the chaos. "You've been charging families for lake access you don't own. You've been lying, intimidating, and stealing. But tonight, the truth belongs to everyone here." Victoria was finished. Within weeks, investigators picked apart her HOA accounts. Fake invoices, missing funds, resort kickbacks. She resigned in disgrace and vanished from town. Neighbors who once glared at me now approached with apologies. I didn't punish them. Instead, I cut dock fees in half and used part of the recovered funds to repair community walkways. The lake transformed from a battlefield into a shared blessing. Families invited me to barbecues. Kids waved when they paddled past my cabin. Uncle was right. The land did hide secrets, and used wisely, those secrets could protect everyone. So tell me, what would you do if an HOA demanded your lake? Drop your own HOA nightmare in the comments below. And if you thought the story was wild, wait until you hear how a city council tried to steal a family farm for Amazon. Hit subscribe, you won't want to miss it.